have disdained any interest in decoration and design, equating contentment with discarnate and invisible matters instead. The ancient Greek Stoic philosopher Epictetus is said to have demanded of a heartbroken friend whose house had burnt to the ground, "If you really understand what governs the universe, how can you yearn for bits of stone and pretty rock?" It is unclear how much longer the friendship lasted. Legend recounts that after hearing the voice of God, the Christian hermit Alexandra sold her house, shut herself in a tomb, and never looked at the outside world again, while her fellow hermit Paul of Crete slept on a blanket on the floor of a windowless mud hut and recited 300 prayers every day, suffering only when he heard of another holy man who had managed 700 and slept in a coffin. Such austerity has been a historical constant. In the spring of 1137, the Cistercian monk St. Bernard of Clairvaux travelled all the way around Lake Geneva without noticing it was even there. Likewise, after 4 years in his monastery, St. Bernard could not report whether the dining area had a vaulted ceiling, it does, or how many windows there were in the sanctuary of his church, 3. On a visit to the Charterhouse of Dauphiné, St. Bernard astonished his hosts by arriving on a magnificent white horse diametrically opposed to the ascetic values he professed, but he explained that he had borrowed the animal from a wealthy uncle and had simply failed to register its appearance on a 4-day journey across France. 3. Nevertheless, such determined efforts to scorn visual experience have always been matched by equally persistent attempts to mould the material world to graceful ends. People have strained their backs carving flowers into their roof beams, and their eyesight embroidering animals onto their tablecloths. They have given up weekends to hide unsightly cables behind ledges. They have thought carefully about appropriate kitchen work surfaces. They have imagined living in unattainably expensive houses pictured in magazines, and then felt sad, as one does on passing an attractive stranger in a crowded street. We seem divided between an urge to override our senses and numb ourselves to our settings, and a contradictory impulse to acknowledge the extent to which our identities are indelibly connected to and will shift along with our locations. An ugly room can coagulate any loose suspicions as to the incompleteness of life, while a sunlit one set with honey-coloured limestone tiles can lend support to whatever is most hopeful within us. Belief in the significance of architecture is premised on the notion that we are, for better or for worse, different people in different places, and on the conviction that it is the architecture's task to render vivid to us who we might ideally be. 4. We are sometimes eager to celebrate the influence of our surroundings. In the living room of a house in the Czech Republic, we see an example of how walls, chairs, and floors can combine to create an atmosphere in which the best sides of us are offered the opportunity to flourish. We accept with gratitude the power that a single room can possess. But sensitivity to architecture also has its more problematic aspects. If one room can alter how we feel, if our happiness can hang on the colour of the walls or the shape of a door, what will happen to us in most of the places we are forced to look at and inhabit? What will we experience in a house with prison-like windows, stained carpet tiles, and plastic curtains? It is to prevent the possibility of permanent anguish that we can be led to shut our eyes to most of what is around us, or we are never far from damp stains and cracked ceilings, shattered cities and rusting dockyards. We can't remain sensitive indefinitely to environments which we don't have the means to alter for the good, and end up as conscious as we can afford to be. Echoing the attitude of Stoic philosophers or St. Bernard around Lake Geneva, we may find ourselves arguing that ultimately it doesn't much matter what buildings look like, what is on the ceiling, or how the wall is treated. Professions of detachment that stem not so much from an insensitivity to beauty as from a desire to deflect the sadness we would face if we left ourselves open to all of beauty's many absences. 5. There is no shortage of reasons to be suspicious of the ambition to create great architecture. Buildings rarely make palpable the efforts that their construction demands. They are coyly silent about the bankruptcies, the delays, the fear, and the dust that they impose. A nonchalant appearance is a frequent feature of their charm. It is only when we try our own hand at construction that we are initiated into the